Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. Broaden the scope of exposure for your business by going beyond the interview. Learn more at www.jmmbmediallc.com or email us at jmmbradio@gmail.com. Today, we welcome authors of the upcoming anthology, Courage in Cannabis Volume 2, envisioned by holistic health practitioner Dr. Bridget Williams of Green Harvest Health. We look forward to sharing with you insights and experiences on this topic. Nikki Lawley is a pediatric nurse. In her younger years, she suffered 2 traumatic brain injuries, but it was the third traumatic brain injury that changed her life forever. During a routine administration of a vaccine to a child, she was thrown against a wall, which resulted in cervical instability and a life riddled with pain. When all hope seemed lost, Nikki turned to cannabis. This discovery empowered her to not only regain her life, but filled her with a passion to learn more about and advocate for cannabis as to be used to relieve traumatic brain injuries and other medical traumas. Welcome, Nikki.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, welcome, welcome. Wow, that is a story.
I gotta say, I never thought I'd ever be a advocate as outspoken as I am now about plant medicine. My life trajectory completely changed in 2016 when I suffered my traumatic brain injury. And as a nurse, I was not educated that we have an endocannabinoid system. So imagine my surprise when I actually found the plant as a last resort. I was ready to take my life, and a mobile billboard driving down the Las Vegas Strip advertised getting your medical marijuana card in Nevada today. And that billboard actually saved my life. And my story with Courage and Cannabis is sort of about, my life before the injury, then the injury, at trying to get a diagnosis, and then ultimately becoming a very outspoken advocate for the patient, stories and experiences, because people don't know what they don't know. And I was one of those people.
Yes, and I think we all were. It wasn't until the volume 1 of Courage and Cannabis that I even realized that we had a I can't even say it, a system that requires cannabis. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Imagine my surprise. I mean, literally, I was prescribed so many different pills and so many different substances to try and take away my chronic pain, my anxiety, depression, and my cognitive function issues. And nothing worked. Each one of the prescriptions that was prescribed actually had more and more debilitating symptoms. And so then they just prescribe another drug to try and mitigate the symptoms of the original drug, instead of addressing the problem and actually saying, yeah, a traumatic brain injury can actually cause these symptoms, but we're not sure what is causing what. So maybe we need to do one drug at a time, or maybe there's some holistic treatments that could help. Maybe nutrition could actually help. But instead, it was literally just more drugs, more drugs, more drugs, more drugs, more specialists, more drugs. And you had to almost, the thing with traumatic brain injury is it's an invisible illness, right? You can't see, like, I'm not in a wheelchair, or you can't see a cast on my arm. So you think I'm fine. But Ida and Ruth, I couldn't do this interview if I had not medicated before. I can't come up with thoughts and be able to communicate the way I do with cannabis. And that's what I'm trying to get across, that stop judging what you don't understand and be a voice and listen and just be open to receiving the information, instead of just saying, oh, that chick's a lazy stoner. I am so not lazy, and I'm so not anything like that. I have an insane social media following of people really wanting to know about the story and understand the plant as medicine. And, I've been banned on Instagram. I've had issues on Facebook, and you don't know how to really navigate these things. It's not like there's a handbook of how to be a cannabis advocate 101 after you suffered traumatic brain injury. So I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants, just kind of really hoping to normalize the conversation and remove the stigma.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Nikki, I'd like to ask you if you could briefly describe what it was like for you experiencing your brain injury before you started cannabis, and then what it was like for you after you learned and started using cannabis, just so people can get an idea of how this plant works.
Sure. So when I first suffered the traumatic brain injury, I never thought it would be a life-altering experience. I mean, I had been hit in the head a couple times before that, where I was diagnosed with a concussion or closed head injury. And I expected just to be the same. And unfortunately, it was so not like that. And what was probably the worst thing was I was a respected medical professional on the same level as doctors and other nurses. I was never regarded as like a faker or a malingerer. And so when you have an invisible disability and I was injured at work. So what had happened was a child, snapped his head back at me, and I bounced into a wall and back into his head for this double impact injury. But you can't see the damage. It's not like it's in your brain, your brain's been jostled and it just didn't recover the same. So when I say I have a headache, it's not a headache like people get, like a little bit of PMS and a little headache. My headache is 7 out of 10 every single day from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to bed. Prior to cannabis, I could not communicate that to doctors. They would literally say it's impossible to have a headache still 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, a year after the injury. They're like, no, that's migraines. I'm like, no, it's not migraines. It never stops pounding. And that's when I finally had to find, outside of the workers' compensation system, a doctor that could actually diagnose me with the cervical instability. And the cervical instability actually plays a greater role than we ever thought of the brain injury, because it basically controls all the blood flow going to your brain. And so when you find out that there actually is a diagnosis and there actually is a reason that you're feeling that way, it's almost a relief. I mean, I don't want to have a bobblehead. Was not the goal ever. But at the end of the day, to have someone say, wow, no wonder you're in so much pain. No wonder you've been through hell. We found the reason why. That's such an empowering feeling after you've been told by every doctor you're seeing that there's nothing wrong with you. Your scans are normal. There is no problem here. And I knew there was a problem. I knew my brain was not connecting the dots. And so cannabis helps me connect those dots. Is it a cure-all? Absolutely not. It is a tool in my toolbox that helps me manage my daily activities and my quality of life. My quality of life is so improved because of this plant. And so many people don't know that, and they have no idea how that works. And so when I found cannabis the first time, I mean, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm so much better. It was more like, my head doesn't hurt as much. And so when I came back to New York State, I live in Buffalo, New York. And when I came back to New York State, I expected to be able to get a medical card just as I did in Nevada. And then I had hoped to be able to medicate in New York the same way. Well, chronic pain was not one of the conditions that was recognized in New York in 2017, about 4 months after my injury. So I became that same hopeless person, that same person that had no hope. And all I thought about was truthfully killing myself. And when you feel like you're a total burden to society and your loved ones, and everything in your life just hurts, and you're so miserable and in such a dark place, and people are just like, you should be grateful, or snap out of it and, suck it up, buttercup. Well, you don't understand the stuff I'm going through, humans. And for you to just assume you understand, it's crazy the amount of chemicals that were in my body and that were out of balance and out of whack. And that's truly what made me suicidal. It wasn't that I wanted to kill myself. I just wanted the pain to stop. I just wanted the agony. I wanted my brain back. I wanted to be able to communicate the way I always had. And when you get to that point where you have no hope and you feel literally like no one's listening to you. And then I came, back from Las Vegas and talked to my doctors about cannabis. And they're like, yeah, no, you're a drug seeker. You're just seeking drugs. You are, if you're smoking cannabis, it's not medicinal. If you're using the black market cannabis, that's not medicinal. And so here's how naive I was. In Nevada, when I went to my first dispensary, I really believed that this was a medical dispensary. And this was not like the same stuff that Johnny down the street grew. I thought there was something really super powerful and special because it came from a medical dispensary. And so I thought the only way I could get cannabis was through a medical dispensary. I didn't think, and my kids were like, Mom, we can get pot. I'm like, no, it's not medical. I mean, when you really think about it, we laugh about that shit now. But at the time, I am telling you right now, I was like, oh no, that's not the same. This was medical cannabis. And, it's really funny when you think about it. And now, while I'm still a total shopper in the dispensaries, because I'm constantly trying to improve the effects of the cannabis I'm consuming. Because for me, it's not about the THC or the CBD or an isolated molecule in the plant. It's about the whole plant and how it all works together. Terpenes, which are the essential oils in the plant, are what I really focus on when I go to a dispensary and shop, because I find certain terpenes really help my cognitive function. Like, I can do math. When I'm unmedicated, I cannot count to 20. When I'm medicated, I can actually do basic math and actually understand words and communicate freely. When I'm unmedicated, it's a real struggle. And when people see the unmedicated Nikki, they think like, wow, what a ditz. It's not that I'm a ditz. It's that I don't have my medicine and I'm not functioning the right way. So there's a lot to it, right? And when you start diving into the science, I don't know if you guys can see behind me, but I have pretty much every cannabis book written and the planet, just about. Not really, but I have at least 75 to 100 books on the subject, and trying to find a book where I could understand it was really hard because my cognitive function, and retaining information. So the Courage in Cannabis anthology really kind of helped me see, wow, I'm not so alone. There's a lot of people with great stories. And how do we come out of the closet and be the change and be the difference that the world needs to see? The whole Schedule 1 thing makes me literally crazy. The fact that this is the same product category as heroin, as, ecstasy, like, that's a problem to me. That's for a high potential of abuse and no medicinal benefits. There is nothing further from the truth of cannabis. There are medicinal benefits. There are lives being saved by this plant, and we need to talk about that. Is there research? Yes. Do you have to go out of the country for it? Yes. Why? Because the government created this entire system of trying to find the harm of the plant rather than trying to talk about its benefits. And so all your studies are funded by, like, the National Institute of Health Drug Dependency Division and things like that just talk about the negative. And the products that they were using out of the University of Mississippi, 5 years ago even, were absolutely worthless. I mean, people weren't reporting positive outcomes because the product quality was not what you're getting in a medical dispensary. It was literally a ground bunch of almost oregano and hemp that patients were being studied on its effects, and they weren't finding it beneficial. Why? Because they were using this product that was so far inferior compared to what's available even in the illicit market.
Wow.
That's a
We
lot
got
of
some
information.
yes, that's a lot. We got some shout outs. Rick is saying Nikki is so awesome. Yes, she is. And what a testimony. And we got Yinka in the house. Hey, Yinka.
Hey.
Good to see you on. And she's in London, so it's pretty late there.
Right?
Yes. Wow. What an amazing story, Nikki.
Mhm.
Amazing story.
I just want to help people. And while I might not be able to do it as a nurse anymore, I know I'm making a difference by changing hearts, minds, and lives just by sharing my story. I'm normalizing that conversation. I can appeal to the super conservative human or the most liberal hippie. I mean, I literally am sort of a chameleon in the flesh. People can relate to me in a way that maybe they can't the traditional cannabis user or the hippie stoner. I don't have tattoos all over me. Not that there's absolutely any problem with that whatsoever, but when you're trying to normalize the conversation, it's also really hard as an industry when we name products so inappropriately. Like, it's a big thing. I don't want to go to the 60-year-old down the street and say, hey, sis, why don't you go to the dispensary and try some cheetah piss for your headache? I mean, that just sounds disgusting, right? I mean,
yeah,
as an industry, it's just nasty, right? Like, I don't want to call titty bubbles. Like, that's not medicinal. Even super lemon haze. I mean, how do we communicate things in a different way where we're being serious that this is actual medicine? So one of the ultimate goals I have is to launch a patient-centric product line focusing on terpenes and the health benefits of the plant to actually make a difference and make inroads from an educational perspective with real-world evidence data. One of the things that really helped me identify what worked for me was journaling my different products that I consumed. I've consumed so many different products, probably like 5,000 of them. And one of the things I do is I always document that experience, and having that back end certificate of analysis or the test report that goes with the product. So it shows you the chemical composition, the different terpenes, the different minor cannabinoids. That is so essential. And it should literally be a requirement in every state to have the top 3 terpenes and the top 3 cannabinoids in every single product. I mean, on the label, easy to find, just like you would look at the back of a Tylenol bottle, maybe not Tylenol, because we all know that has acetaminophen in it, but any kind of ingredient, no matter what you're consuming, you should be able to see what the product has in it. And that's not something that's standardized. And that's very frustrating, especially when you go to different markets. My brain injury doesn't know if I'm in New York or if I'm in Georgia. Okay. Like, state lines mean nothing to my injury. And each state is literally like its own little island and has its own little set of laws and regulations.
yes.
And there's something I just want to bring this up because you said something that was very important. And you mentioned about being a nurse and not being able to really bring this out as a nurse. Now, here's the funniest part. My mother was a nurse, and she was, you're talking about the 1930s, probably, that she became a nurse. So when she was nursing, and I mentioned this in the last program, they had a medica pharmacia.
Mhm.
And you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And it had all of the natural ingredients that most medicines were made of. I don't remember, because I remember reading through it. And as a child, I thought it was wonderful because it mentioned licorice and cherries and lemons, all kinds of things like that that I was familiar with. Who would be more qualified to learn about cannabis and work with people than nurses? Because they are the ones that have that type of training. They're more open to it. They're not locked into place in the Western world, I must say, into ignoring cannabis. Nurses have always been at the forefront of the nursing medical profession, even from the Civil War, the Crimean War. That's where the nursing professions came from. And they were using, guess what?
Cannabis.
Cannabis.
Hmm.
It was part of their toolkit.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I just think it's interesting that you mentioned that nurses can't. But from my point of view is they should be in the forefront because they're the ones who are most open to it. And that is part of
Absolutely.
their legacy as nurses in this country. So I just wanted to
Absolutely.
throw that in.
Please do. It's not all about Nikki Lawley. It's all about the plant.
Mhm. The plant is wonderful. No, it's nothing, taking nothing away from you. No, no, no. I
No,
didn't
no,
mean it
no.
that
I
way.
know that. Oh, no, no, no.
Yeah,
I don't feel that way at all.
okay, because I love your story and I love your passion and your knowledge. We
Thank you.
don't get to hear this. Again, this is what Ida and I experienced the first time around with the first book. We were just mind blown. You
Yes.
know, what is it, the endocannabinoid system that we all have? Who knew? No
Who
one, I've
knew?
never heard a doctor anywhere on this planet
Other than
mention
Dr.
that.
Bridget.
Yes.
Never mention it. And yet it's part of our physical makeup. Why would you argue with
Homeostasis.
how as a doctor can you argue with what we're made of and the way we're made when you're supposed to be working with the human body to promote wellness, to prevent illness? How can you ignore such a major part of the human body? I don't get it, but I'm sure they've got an explanation. And I'll be quiet now.
Yes. And we got some shout outs from Richard Furlow. And she sounds OG to me.
Thank you.
And
Mm,
then he says, much love for the nursing profession.
I'm no
yes.
longer practicing as a nurse, just to be crystal clear. My injury has made me, truly disabled.
Yeah.
But I'm differently abled. Rather than calling
Yes.
it disabled, I'm differently abled.
I
And
like that.
I
I'm a
like
big,
that, and you're doing
yeah,
it very well. You're
yes,
doing
you
it
are.
very well.
So how
You
can
are a credit to your profession and a blessing to people.
yes,
thank
you
you.
are. And
You're
how
so
do people connect with you? How do they follow you and get involved?
So you can find me on any social media channel except Twitter, but it looks like I'm going to have to hit a Twitter account now that they're allowing more talk about cannabis. So it looks like I'm going to have to build one of those. But I'm on Facebook as well as Instagram, LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel, and my website is www.nikkiandtheplant.org. Please feel free to reach out. I'm at Max Connections kind of everywhere, but you can follow me everywhere.
Okay. Okay. Wow, Nikki. We can't wait to read your chapter. You're an amazing person. And we definitely want to have you come back and talk more about what you're doing to serve in this industry and to help others find the truth.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I really appreciated sharing my story with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. That was
Okay.
awesome. Awesome. So next we have Miss Mary Jane Borden, and you guys have seen her before here. And
Yeah.
she's our political advocate.
Yeah, she's got all the down low on what's going on in those hallowed, not so hallowed halls around the issue of cannabis. Welcome, Mary Jane. Good to see you
Well,
again.
yes, it's good to see you, and I'm glad to. Thank you for having me on your show tonight. I really appreciate the outreach and the ability to tell my story to wide audiences that you have. Um, I like to a little background on me. I'd like to consider myself. I guess the word term is an OG, but I'm really OG. I go back, and I think this is important because I'm one of those people. Maybe you're more my generation than some of the people that I talk to otherwise, but I go back and I remember what it was like 20 years ago, 40 years ago, to be in the cannabis space and how illegal it was. I don't think people really understand how what we had to go through and what really happened to people back then who might have been caught, like let's say in the case of Nikki or other people that we know who've been caught with cannabis and then would have to face all kinds of sanctions, up into including jail time. You've got to remember now, cannabis is patchwork legal. Patchwork at best. All right.
Mm.
Yes, in Ohio, where I am, we have medical marijuana. We have a fairly decent program that you can go to a dispensary and purchase product from. But if I walk outside that dispensary and I happen to be on federal property, then I'm going to be subject to federal law. And what that means is that that same ounce that I purchased in that dispensary, if I'm on federal property and they want to really prosecute it, I could get as much as pay much as $1,000 fine and spend a year in jail. That's the simplified version of it, and it gets worse from there. And if we go back in time, we just saw, I think his name is Luke Skirmaz, and hopefully I didn't screw up his name too badly, get released from prison just this last couple weeks. And I remember when he was busted back in 2004 for doing the very same things that over, what's it in Ohio now? Probably we're getting up towards 70 dispensaries. I could be a little bit wrong on my actual number here. 70 dispensaries in Ohio that are doing the exact same thing that he did, but he was convicted for a life sentence. And the way the federal law is written, with the quantities that he would have been selling, and if you wipe away with the programs that you have right now, and remember, I'll get to that in a second here. The penalties are terrible. I mean, this is awful stuff. And I think we need to be cognizant of that and keep moving forward so we can finally put the war on drugs behind us. Okay. And I think that I could go into, if you want to know more, I'll be quiet right now and answer your questions. But right now, my little background here is that since I've been this so long, I published an article fairly recently called Mary Jane's Guide. Mary Jane's Guide. By the way, my name is Mary Jane. And I just celebrated my 100th article for the Columbus Free Press, for which I've been writing for 20 years. So that should give you a little bit of background of where I could go. My roots are so deep in this movement, I could really talk to you about anything.
Wow,
Let
Mary
me ask
Jane.
you something, a quick question. I'm sorry, Ida. You say federal property. So in other words, they could be within their home using it. They could be in a clinic using their marijuana. But if they go into a park, what are federal properties in a city situation? What are the federal properties that they could be caught on?
Let me give you Columbus, Ohio, as an example. I don't know where you guys are from, but Columbus is a fairly big city and it's a state capital. And so I use this kind of an analogy. I've got a couple ounces. Well, let's say I've got 100 grams of marijuana. Now, formerly under state law, 100 grams of marijuana, you get a citation that doesn't have a criminal record, and you pay a $150 fine. That's under actually the basic marijuana law in Ohio. But I'm a patient. Okay, so I have my 100 grams. State highway patrolman stops me. I say I'm a registered patient. He says, "Oh, okay. You're free to go because that's legal." All right. Now, okay, I'm in the city of Columbus, remember? Okay. And I'm going to walk out on, instead of being on state property, which would maybe be like the state house property would be state property. I walk out on the sidewalk. okay? And I'm in front of, I'm on the City of Columbus property, the sidewalks, City of Columbus property. My 100 grams, $10 fine, $10 fine. All right. Now, okay, around the corner is the federal courthouse. The federal courthouse, and it's federal. The federal government will own these pieces of property on which they operate. You know, federal courthouses, uh, federal parks. There's a number of places like that. But let's just use the federal courthouse, which is a couple blocks from the State House, as the example. I'm caught with my 100 grams at the federal courthouse. And if they prosecute, again, this is all prosecuted, and you don't have an attorney to get you out of it. So you're prosecuted, and that's where the penalties are. You know, $1,000 and 100 and 1 year in prison. Okay. Now it escalates from there. I mean, if you have, like, for example, you would have a dispenser, and you could probably have, I don't know, 100 plants in there. I don't know really what would be. What's the average nut plant size for a dispensary? I don't know the answer to that question specifically, but therein you get these people who are running dispensaries are taking an incredible risk, because if all of a sudden federal law, you know, we could talk that in a minute, but you know, all of a sudden it becomes legal the way it was when I started out, you're getting the game plan of Luke Scaramazza, and you're doing some serious time. I think, as I said, mandatory minimum sentencing, put him in prison for life.
Wow. So I know you work very heavily in that space. So everybody has to really be on the same page. You know, you can't tell people, it's like you telling your child, this is okay to do, but then they walk across the street and it's no longer okay to do. So it brings mixed signals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just so convoluted. I mean, once I started really digging into it and studying it, I go back. Well, let's talk about the war on drugs, because that's really the root of it. That was declared in 1971 by President Richard Nixon. You know, we think we could fight wars on things. This really bothers me. We're going to have the war on cancer. We're going to have the war on heart disease. We're going to have the war on drugs. Wars don't work. Whether it was Vietnam, whether it was Afghanistan, I'd argue Ukraine, they don't work, you know? So, but somehow people get into this warlike mentality and think that they can change things by declaring a war on it. Well, with that mentality, in the 1980s and 1990s, I counted them up. 30 different laws were passed to sanction somehow cannabis users. Let's say, for example, one of them, I remember this in the late 90s, one of the U.S. reps gloated because they passed a bill that would deprive college students of student loans if you had a cannabis conviction, and you had to put it on your FAFSA. I remember filling out the FAFSA for my son, and you had to check a box. You know, do you use marijuana? And if you lied, it was worse than if you said you were marijuana. You could be banned for life. So that was one of them. You know, we've had situations where you can't get a transplant. In the late 1990s, the government wanted to control what was on television, so they're trying to plant anti-drug messages in both ads and in, like, for example, a soap opera. You know, was paid or was encouraged by the federal government to put clauses in their drama about, you know, how bad drugs were. And it goes on and on from there. Like I say, there was the Rave Act. This was probably one of the last ones, probably in the early, I think it was around 2004 that Congress passed this one, that, you know, if you gather together and you have people there who are using cannabis or other illegal drugs, the property owner can have his land confiscated by the federal government. This is what we were dealing with. And I think I got to understand that these things have not gone away. The federal, like, as I told you earlier, the federal government still considers cannabis a Schedule I drug and all the accoutrements that go with that. And they still have the laws on the books about, as like I said, about the penalties are still on the books. And I think the only way that we can get this to change is to have action by Congress. And you saw last year how difficult that was. Even something kind of I don't think it's necessarily innocuous, because safe banking is really, really important. It is important. It is, and I think it is discriminatory against both the poor and the races. I think it's very discriminatory. But you couldn't get safe banking through, no matter how many people agreed on it, because of the difference in the control factors in the House and the Senate. I think Biden would have actually have signed a bill like that, but it never got to his desk. So we're in a conundrum right now with now having a Republican Congress and a Senate, a Democratic Senate. We could feel that bills like the Safe Banking Act would probably get through the Senate, where it was a little bit stalled last time because of the Republicans had the majority, had a very slim majority, but had enough majority to kill some bills. But now we have to go through the U.S. House, and a lot of the chairmen of committees there, for example, Jim Jordan and the like, are very anti-cannabis. They want to stay the way it is right now. And it's right now, that's where we get that patchwork thing going. And so, is Congress the answer? I don't know. We'll see what they do. I think Senator Schumer, who is the majority leader in the U.S. Senate, is trying to find a pathway to get some of this stuff going in the House and the Senate through this second part of President Biden's term. A lot of people are saying we got to wait for 2024 to hopefully have the Democrats take over those bodies. You just never know what's going to happen. So I wouldn't necessarily count on that.
But
one other thing I wanted to mention is that the industry as we know it, okay, is predicated on very thin, fine line, almost a little piece of silk, if you will, because the only thing that keeps the federal government out of the dispensaries that are legal in various states is a rider to an appropriations bill. That's the only thing that keeps it going. Now, when the Republicans took over the House, they swore they were going to never pass legislation anymore through riders. And I think I'm kind of sitting chewing my fingers and my gums, going, "What does that mean for our industry? If they decide that they don't want to legislate and they don't want to put the riders in place, what's going to happen?"
Okay, I'm sorry, I think you had a question.
Well, my thing is, okay, now that the education is out there and people are finding out the truth, aren't they working with their local governments to, push forward making this medical plant, changing the laws around it in the federal space? Because that's what we hire our senators and our governors and all that stuff for, and our communities and our states to advocate for us.
I'd like to think that's the way it is, that's the way it works, but I'm not sure with the lobbyists and the dark money groups. I'm not quite sure that it's working as it should anymore. But I think, because from my standpoint, remember, I'm looking at this longitudinally, and I can remember back in 1996, when California passed Proposition 215. That was a game changer, because that was like the very first ballot initiative. And I think it taught some of the other states in the country, like, hey, if we want to change prohibition, get rid of prohibition, we can do it. Maybe not fairly, but we can do it within the confines of our state laws that have the states that have an initiative process built into their constitutions, usually in their constitutions. And so that's where you had California, then you had Washington, then you have Oregon, and you have Colorado. You had the same thing happen with adult use in 2012. I think once Colorado and Washington went adult use in 2012, it opened the doors wide and said, hey, look what we can do. So it started legalization started going on the ballot in places like you never thought of. Oklahoma. I remember a guy in Oklahoma getting busted and having the same thing happen to him, where he had a life in prison sentence for growing cannabis. And so all of a sudden along comes this initiative, and people like that get let out of jail. Okay. And so it's happening. Even you're getting in places like Alabama, South Dakota, which are very conservative states, passing this legislation. And I think it is incremental. I think at some point we're going to have half the states having adult use, well over 3/4. I think there's only like maybe 3 states now that don't have some kind of a medical program, like Idaho doesn't, Kansas doesn't. Once those states turn and you have a unanimity of states, I don't think the federal government prohibition is going to stand up, but even so, we're just seeing kind of, I'm not quite sure where the feds are at, where they're actually going to listen to the people. I'm not sure. They're going to listen to the corporations who are, like say the big pharma and some of these other drug testing companies have a lot riding on the illegality of cannabis.
That was going to be my question. Should everything fall into place lovely and everything, and cannabis becomes accepted even at the federal level, who would be the biggest losers? Because we know that money talks. So who would be the biggest losers economically?
I think number one, the drug testing industry is going to get hit hard because their bread and butter is marijuana. More people use marijuana than they use all these other drugs. It's like maybe a 20-to-1 ratio at least, if not well more than that. So if you're only those 20 people go away and all you have to test is that one person, it doesn't make it financially viable. Okay. I would say the private prison industry. The prison industry has been, the United States is an incarceration nation. It was at some point, I think it's come down a little bit, but like 2.5 million people were incarcerated, and over half of those were for drugs. Not all of them for marijuana, but a lot of them for drugs. And so I think if you start, legalizing marijuana is kind of getting edged out of the system. I don't think people are going to federal prison like they used to for cannabis, although there's still people in prison for cannabis. But once those other drugs go away, I think there's semi-legalized. Certainly, I think there's some movements towards that. They're going to constrict, and they rely on government money to operate. Let's see, from Big Pharma. I'm a product of Big Pharma, and look what I do for the rest of my life. And I think I really know this industry very, very well, and how they work and how they operate. You'll see, and I think one of the things, the way I want to answer this question too, is I want you to refer you to one of the things that my analyses from my Mary Jane's Guide that I did on what I call opposition research, to try to understand who the opposition is. I don't think we really grasp that, and grasp the opposition's power. For example, there's Kevin Sabet. Kevin Sabet is a guy that heads up one of these anti-drug organizations, Partnership for Drugs Free America. That was, how did I forget that? Like, for them, these are funded organizations not only by Big Pharma that writes big checks for them. They're also part of a grants program that's run by the federal government. They are funded, I'd say, principally 90% in some cases by the federal government, and they are mandated to oppose legislation and ballot initiatives. I can look it up in statute, and you'll find it there. And so when we look at the opposition, like I would look at who's giving opponent testimony at a bill hearing. And what you'll find are these groups, if I can name it off the top of my head, but they're funded groups. I mean, we activists, to be an activist, you got to commit yourself to being poor, because you don't have any people who are writing you big checks, because, like I say, those checks are reserved for the opposition, really. Any type of partnership, a Drug-Free America group, then they have probably 10 or 20 of them, at least in Ohio. Like, let's say the one for Partnership for Drug-Free Tuscarawas County. Every year we'll get $125,000 from the federal government.
Wow.
To operate and tell us that we shouldn't do drugs. Tell us we shouldn't legalize marijuana. Look it up.
Okay.
That's
That's
interesting.
our opposition. We need to understand who the opposition is if we're going to, kind of counter some of these horrible things that have been done to us, first of all, in the past, as a result of the war on drugs. And that's, like I said, incarceration I talked about a little bit ago, but also moving forward. What is their agenda? What are they going to fund? How, I had one of them. I'll offend anybody by saying this, but they said that we're so opposed to marijuana that we want to revert to the way it was and send people to jail. And I said, like, really? What would Jesus do? Would Jesus send people to jail for a plant? Really? And I think that's almost the framework that you need to teach these people that there is another morality out there that doesn't require incarceration, but instead, understanding, teaching, learning, and figuring out that this plant can be beneficial, and how do we release? I'm trying to find word here. Its benefits for humanity.
Yes.
I don't
Wow.
know if I'm saying it right, but that's what I'm trying to say.
We got
We
you.
feeling you. We feeling you.
Yeah.
So how can people connect with you and stay in the loop?
Well, first of all, I'm one of the 18 original authors for Courage in Cannabis. You can read my a little short version of my life story as my chapter. I'm also going to be part of the second edition, where I'm going to just have a much smaller presence, much smaller article, but I'm still part of it. I'm really grateful for that. I'm a co-founder of a group called the Natural Therapies Education Foundation, that's just a 501c nonprofit trying to do the very things that I'm talking about here with education. And I'm also, as I said, a staff writer for the Columbus Free Press under Mary Jane's Guide. So reaching me is just real simple. It's my name, Mary Jane Borden @gmail.com.
Okay. Well, Mary Jane, it is always a pleasure. You definitely keep us up on the legislative pieces of this industry, and we are looking forward to more contributions from you.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for being a part of the cannabis industries for so long. Oh my God. You definitely are a trooper.
My life's work, literally.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And if you want to know anything about the industry, Mary Jane is your girl.
Thank you.
Not to quote
Thank you.
some lyrics, but yeah, Mary Jane, we love you. We thank you for your dedication and your excellence in what you do, and the way that you're able to explain it in a way that everyone can understand it. So thank you for your clarity. It's much
Thank
Thank you for having me on your show. This is a great
Absolutely.
time. Thank you. And I look forward to the next time we'll talk.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. All right. So next we have Lakeisha Randy, who is going to Randall. I'm sorry. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Lakeisha. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So tell everybody about Lakeisha.
Okay, so I'm a sickle cell warrior. I'm 32 years old. I'm a sickle cell warrior, and it's like I have sickle cell disease and a cannabis advocate recently, because I use cannabis for my disease to combat the pain, and also with sickle cell, I've developed opiate dependence. So it's like for people, like I've always been introduced to cannabis as like a saying that it's a gateway drug, but for me, it's been like an exit drug as far as the opiates go, because the sickle cell, if you don't know what sickle cell is, it's a blood disorder that that's you're born with. I was born with it, and my brother has it as well. Bridget Randall, he was in Courage in Cannabis, the first book he's author.
Yes.
Yeah, but we both have sickle cell, and sickle cell, they basically give us pain, like strong pain medications to cope with the pain, because we're in so much pain at times. Like I'm sorry, this is my first interview, so I'm like I don't
Go ahead, just be you. Just take your time and act like we sitting at the kitchen table.
Exactly.
But yeah, I just don't want to ramble and talk about too much. But
That's okay. Be free.
Mm-hmm.
okay,
We're
so
here to
like
listen.
I was diagnosed with sickle cell at 12 months. I've dealt with a lot of stuff having sickle cell. You know, I've had seizures. I've had strokes. I had multiple surgeries and stuff. And you know, I'm in this book. I'm just like kind of touching on that. Is I have a spark in the book, so I'm touching on just like some of the stuff that I've dealt with sickle cell and the pain management that I have dealt with, because I've been in and out the hospital my whole life, it seems like. And you know, sickle cell has taken a lot from me. Like I wasn't able to go to my prom and things like that. Like I missed out on a lot of big things in life because of sickle cell and me being in pain or being in the hospital, and just like missing out on a good quality of life. And like the pain medication that I was taking to combat it, that's required to that they prescribe to you, like Percocets and when you're in the hospital, morphine, Dilaudid, stuff like strong medications through IV. But it's easy. Like those things are what I wasn't. I feel like I wasn't educated enough when I was younger when I was put on those medications as to how my body is going to build a tolerance to it and how it's going to require more and more of it in order to like continue to keep my body going in a sense, because that's what it's been. It's like when I didn't have the medication in my system, then like my body would physically react, and they told me that's called opiate dependency, and that's common in sickle cell, not just sickle cell but other illnesses that that you can die from, that you have to be on strong medications for. So it's like I'm on Percocet and stuff now, but like it's I've been on a long journey of trying to find the right dose of medication. When I now live in Florida, but I used to live in Ohio. I was going to different doctors in Ohio, and they were telling me that that each of them just throwing different pain medications at me, because I'm telling them about the pain that I'm in, but like the pain medication, they will have to keep bumping it up in order for it to help. But at the same time, the pain medication is doing damage that it's like, it's not allowing me to be myself, basically. Like my brain wasn't the same. I'm noticing it's not functioning the same. I'm walking like zombie. Like I'm not myself anymore. I'm like out of it and unable to get my thoughts together, my words out, and like just be able to be me and think freely and normally, like how I did when I wasn't on so much medication. And when I started telling them the things that I was going through and stuff, then they were saying that giving me more medications to cover up those side effects, basically, because I had went like, okay, I'm getting lost in my stuff.
That's okay. Take your
Okay.
time. Take your
Yeah.
time. Just breathe.
Yeah,
Just
breathe. Let's ask you a few questions. Maybe that will help you to sort of
That
settle down, because this is a huge topic. How old did you say you were when you started, when you were diagnosed with sickle cell?
I was
12
diagnosed.
months?
I was diagnosed at 12 months.
At 12 months. So from 12 months until the present, you've been on various painkillers, and
Yeah,
many of them are opiates.
yeah, mainly, but not since 12 months. Like I would say they put me on opiates when I was like around 10 or 9 or 10. Like it wasn't until I started getting it, like when I was in grade school, when I got on opiate, like the Percocets and stuff. But
Okay. So let's say when they started putting you on the opiates,
mhm.
can you remember and share with our audience the difference that you noticed in yourself at that time? Can you remember the
Okay, so
difference?
from what I do remember, I was always ambitious and active, and like like my brother, he has the same illness. So he was always like my motivator, like anything he can do, then, you know, I always wanted to do and do it too. And, you know, show that, you know, we're normal. We can do these things like like the rest of the normal kids or whatever. But, you said, like I feel like it took my drive away, and like, not it wasn't just the medication, but sickle cell itself, me going in and out the hospital once I started getting sick, and like started, because I didn't have I was having I had a stroke. That was like the first big thing that I had, that when I was 12 years old. My first stroke was when I was 12, and I had to learn how to walk all over again and everything. I was on a walker for weeks, because like the left side of my body had went numb. So like they said that the sickle cell had caused a stroke. So it was like, then I had my second stroke at 15, when I was going into high school, and I was on a walker going into high school as a freshman. And like those kind of things, being in and out the hospital, like I started going into depression, I feel like. And like I didn't know how to handle that kind of stuff. I didn't know how to handle it mentally, because all I wanted was to be normal. And in my mind, I wasn't normal because I was going through all these things. So like it became like a depression thing. But then like when I got on the pain medication, it was needed, it was necessary, it was helping me feel better at first. But like over time, I feel like the more you need it, and the more it's in your body, and the more they have to keep upping it, and your body builds a tolerance. That's the part that like I wish that I would have understood more when I was younger, because I didn't know that my body was going to build a tolerance to it, and it was going to start requiring it and feeling like it needs it to function. But
So now, oh, I know this is so amazing.
Go ahead,
Lakeisha,
Ida.
your story is amazing. So now that you are in the cannabis stream, have you been able to get off of many of those medications?
yes, like
cannabis.
Definitely. And that's why I feel like I want to be a advocate for cannabis, because it has helped me so much. Like I'm thankful that my brother brought it into my life as another option, because like in my mind, like that's the only option I had was the opiates. And you know, what the prescriptions that the doctors are giving me, because even when he was telling me about it, it's like, you know, we know it as a drug, and you know, we know it as, you know, that's the gateway drug. Once you start that, then you gonna go off the deep end. You know, it's like that's opening the door. But the door was already open and given and open for me, honestly, in a different way, just medically. But they were giving me a different drug to help me that ended up, you know, harming me in the end. So I feel like cannabis is better for me, because like, and it helped me get off the opiates like better, because like when I tried to get off of it by myself, like I was going through a lot trying to get like ask doctors to, you know, lower the doses and stuff. And then, you know, they're telling me, and then my body's reacting when they do to lower the doses. So they end up having to go back up on the dose. But like, so it was like I was in a fight against my body for real. And like,
you mentioned that it was an exit drug, that cannabis was an exit for you.
Yes, exit for me. It was like,
how long have you been using cannabis now?
I'm sorry?
How long have you been using cannabis?
Since like 2018, I've been a medical patient with it, but now like I like, even then, like trying to tell my doctors about it, and back then in Ohio and stuff, trying to get my doctors on board with, you know, switching me from from opiates to cannabis. They weren't on board. They were like, you know, that's not we don't recommend that. That's not a good idea. And, you know, we feel like you're going to require this medication anyway. So you need to basically, they didn't want to help. They weren't
open.
Yeah. They weren't open. Then the doctor, like, I feel like they didn't have the tools to help me with it. Even here in Florida, cause now I live in Florida. But like, my doctor is saying she's fine, like she's okay with me being a medical marijuana patient, but you know, she's still like not really on board with it. She's like, if that helps you, then you can go ahead and do it. But like, I don't recommend it at all. But like the way that I consume it is I don't just smoke it. You know, I use the gummies and tinctures and creams and stuff for my pain. I use it in so many different ways, but it's also helped not just with the sickle cell, because the sickle cell has caused anxiety, depression, so that it helps with that. It's that part of it as well. Like I'm in a better mood. I don't have to take my anxiety medication. I've been off my anxiety medications now. They were giving me anxiety and depression medications. Like I don't take any of those anymore, and I just use cannabis for my mood. I use it for pain. I use it for like everything pretty much. And I mean, and I can honestly say that I use my opiates less. I only use those for like when I'm in severe pain and I know that I'm not trying to I don't want to go to the hospital, so I take my pain medication, and it helps like that. But the thing, like, I'm still in this journey because I still get prescribed my pain medication, and like I said, I still take it when it's necessary. But and my body, I'm still trying to get my body to not feel like it, not need it, like not have a physical reaction when it's not in my body, because that's the only issue that I'm having now is when I don't take it, then like my body physically reacts. But the cannabis, that like it doesn't, I don't go into full withdrawal like I used to go through full blown withdrawal and everything. And that's what was so hard for me to, that's why it was so hard for me to believe that that I can even get off of these medications. But the cannabis helps with the withdrawal. It takes me, I feel like it takes me out of withdrawal. It doesn't leave me just in pain, shaking uncontrollably, and throwing up and all, like running back and forth to the bathroom. It helps me relax more. Yeah, I might have shaking still. Yeah, like I might still feel pain here and there, but it's not nearly as bad as it would normally be, or as I have experienced before.
Yes.
Thank you for your honesty. That you just very honest and very simple. Your story.
Yes. Very.
I can't imagine how many people who hear your story, will benefit, because there are many people out there who have sickle cell. They've been told that the only way is through medication, pain medications, like you said, the Percocets, Dilaudid, all of those things that they don't want. They don't want it. So you just kind of open the door for so many people to at least give medical cannabis, a try. And if they're not ready to try, at least to think about it as an alternative.
Yes.
So thank you so much for your honesty, your transparency.
Thank you.
And we have a shout out from Yinka. Such a powerful testimony. It really is a powerful testimony, because I know people that have sickle cell anemia, and they definitely had their moments where it is just really bad, as well as any other chronic disease.
Right.
At some point you're going to have to find some other relief than the heavy pharmaceutical medicine, because there's an addiction there.
Yeah, and I'm a mom, so like that became for me when I became a mom and being in a zombie mode, and then giving me not only am I taking pain medications, but because I'm having anxiety and depression, then they're piling on the anxiety and pain, the depression medication as well. So like I was literally walking around like a zombie, not myself, a shell of myself. And like those who love me and care about me like could see it, but I was blinded to it. Honestly, it was like it was a normal for me. I was so used to just taking my medication every day to get up, to not be in pain. Okay, I'm taking my medicine, and take not just my pain medication but the sickle cell medication. It's like it's a rotation. When you get up in the morning, you take your medicine and you go. But like I wasn't living, I was existing. And like I didn't have my personality anymore. And I feel like cannabis helped bring that back for me, because like I'm able to think more clearly when I'm on cannabis. Now there's a difference when, and I can tell the difference in how my brain works differently when I have cannabis only in my system, or when I have like cannabis and like opiates in my system. Now today I went and got treatment for my sickle cell because I've been in pain for these last couple of days. So I went and got treatment and got morphine for like through the IV today and in clinic. So like I can tell how my brain is working differently than how it would be if I was just on cannabis, and it's like it's affecting me too, and I feel the difference. But like I feel like I feel way better and more clear headed when it's just, you know, cannabis in my system and I'm just working off of that. But you know, I have those days where I still have to have my the opiates in my system as well, because I'm having like so much pain that, you know, it's I have to have a stronger medication in my system to combat the pain. But and each time I go and have to get treatment, it, you know, I feel like that, like I feel bad, but then at the same time it's like I'm a sickle cell warrior. This is what life is, you know. Like I have to find a way to combat my pain, but still live a quality of life. Still, you know, not sit in it and be like, okay, well, I still have a lot of life to live. You know, God got me here for a reason. You know, the doctors told me I wasn't gonna make it to 18. They told me I wasn't gonna make it to 21, and I'm 32. So, like, God has for me, and as long as I'm here to wake up another day and here to see my daughter and raise her the best way that I can, then like I have a lot to be grateful for and happy for. Like I gotta
We commend you for your courage.
Yeah.
With cannabis, like, but with the I noticed with Percocet and stuff, when that's in my system, I have darker thoughts. Like it's more depressing thoughts. I'm not able to think to the future and positively. I'm like sitting in my pain, like dang, like this is life. I'm feeling sorry for myself more. But in cannabis, it's like, okay, this is temporary. Let me think about. I'm gonna distract myself. You know, it's more of I can do positive distractions with that versus this. So I'm definitely working on, you know, like if cannabis was more affordable and I was able to like have access to it like the way that I'm able to have access to the opiates, go to the pharmacy and get it, and it's paid for by insurance and stuff, then I don't even think that I would need the medication that I'm on now, the home meds that I'm on now. I wouldn't use that at all. I would be able to either grow it my own self, but here in Florida you can't grow it yourself. So, but I would either grow it my own self or like be able to go to a dispensary, get it covered under insurance, and be able to get the amount that I need.
Well, let's pray that going forward that happens, because, you know, at the end of the day, we have witnessed from many different conversations that cannabis helps a lot of problems.
Yes.
A lot of problems, a lot of medical problems that the traditional medicine just pretty much puts a Band-Aid on. It doesn't really do anything, and it causes more harm than good.
Right.
So, Lakeisha, we are so looking forward to reading your chapter in the book. And how can people follow you and follow your journey?
I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Facebook as Lakeisha Randall, and you can email me, Lakeisha Randall 27@gmail.com. I'm going to be doing my Instagram and Twitter, so I'll put that on my Facebook page once it's linked. But right now,
yes. Well, we're looking forward to following you and definitely seeing what you're doing in the community to help other people with similar issues like yourself, and help them pull through as well. Because you, as Yinka is saying here, you are a true warrior. Because, I mean, anybody that's in pain a lot and have to depend on pharmaceutical drugs to relieve the pain and risk being addicted, risk the body shutting down from these different pharmaceutical drugs, and being able to find a way to minimize that is definitely a victory.
Mhm.
Definitely a victory. So we are looking forward to more collaborations, Lakeisha, and
Thank you.
can't wait to read your chapter.
Yes,
Mm.
I'm in the process of writing my own book too. So like,
Oh,
share my story about everything. Like just so, like I'll definitely be. You can reach me on Facebook, and I'll definitely look forward to talking to you guys again anytime.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Lakeisha. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
You are a miracle. You are a
Yes, you
miracle.
are. Yes,
Thank
Thank
you
you so
are.
much.
And stay strong.
Thank you.
Yes.
Wow. Another amazing group of cannabis warriors.
Yes. And so unexpected. Never, it's always amazing. This is one of the stories that we've been doing for a year now. This is our second go round. We've been in touch with them in between the two books, but it never ceases to amaze me the stories around cannabis. You know, the political issues, the moral issues, the individual stories are just powerful. And it's like there's a whole world of wellness that's coming up, and it's coming up through a plant, you know, something green growing in the earth.
Yeah.
Nothing, it didn't take any degrees. It doesn't take, a big chemical laboratory, or a big company. It's been sitting out there all along. And
Yes.
that's sometimes, last time I kept saying mind blown behind stories, and the same thing today, mind blown,
Yes.
mind blown. And sickle cell anemia is such, I have a friend who has lived with it for years. And remember her going through times when we thought she was near death, and to know that this can be an answer for her. And I'm pretty sure from the last I heard that she has also discovered cannabis. But how many people don't know about this? How many people, and I'm talking about African Americans who have sickle cell because it is our disease, don't know that cannabis is a possibility. And those who do can't afford it, so they have to go to the streets to get it. And if they, as Mary Jane was saying, if they get caught on the wrong street, on the wrong side of the street with it, they face sometimes a life sentence. How insane is that? Yet they can go to a pharmaceutical and get drugs that can make them addicts and bringing them into this whole nonsense about, the war on opiates. America's, has an opiate addiction. Oh, no small wonder. Cannabis throws everything into perspective when it comes to medicine
Yes, it does.
and the way that it's practiced, especially in this country. That's what I see and what I'm hearing. It just throws things into perspective. It shows that perhaps the way that we've been using pharmaceuticals, because I do believe pharmaceuticals have their place. And in
Yeah.
emergency, absolutely. If I'm dying and the only way you can keep me from dying is to use some sort of pharmaceutical, that makes sense. But if you can add to my health by making cannabis affordable for me, make it part of my insurance, why won't you do that? I guess that's the question that I'm left with. Why not? So anyway, I love these conversations.
Yes, I do too.
I
And
love
we
these
got
conversations.
Yinka in the house. Um did it come up? We just need more enlightenment.
Indeed.
Absolutely. And through these in collaborations, we are hoping that people will at least take a look, at least learn, because
Mhm.
you don't like like they say, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you could be believing and not believing because of a lie that you were told.
Yes.
It's to do your own research.
Absolutely.
And that's what I teach my son. Don't take my word for it. Research it.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't got to take my word. Just check it out for yourself.
That's why
So
we have, there's a library in every city, and we don't even need those sometimes because we have the internet. Google it. Google
yes,
it until you are content with the answer that you find.
yes, and get in contact with these people
Mm-hmm.
that we've interviewed, because as you can see, all of them are passionate,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them are really striving to educate and empower people to understand the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Mary Jane, she my hero because she all up in Congress. She she
Another courageous woman. That's why it's called
yes,
Courage in Cannabis. It's about courage to bring up this subject that we know, Ida and I both know. Okay, I won't include you, Ida. In my generation, that's not fair. And I'll tell on myself, in my generation, it was just illegal. It was illegal. And if you got caught with any of it, you were going to jail.
yes, I remember that.
You know, and now it's like, I'm just grateful that this is coming to light, that there are warriors out there like Lakeisha and Mary Jane and Dr. Bridget, all of these women who are out there, and men who are out there trying to bring light to this subject. Yinka just responded, yes, you don't know what you don't know, learning a lot tonight. And
Yes,
that's it. We don't know. We just don't know. I didn't know at the beginning of this journey. I had no idea. My mind is like, oh, not that it was bad. I never thought that marijuana was bad. And then when they started calling it cannabis, I was like, okay, so why are they calling it cannabis? And learning what it was all about in these conversations, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I
yeah,
think at some part, I also had that feeling of that stigma, because that's what I grew up with. There was a stigma behind it. If someone was caught in the neighborhood, it was the conversation of the neighborhood. So and so got caught with a joint, and that made him a terrible person.
yes,
It's crazy. And now it's like, well, yeah, it's my medical marijuana, and I need it, and it's good. It's just mind blown, mind blown. We are coming into a new age of thinking and wellness, a hope
yes,
for wellness, and a wellness that can belong to the masses and doesn't
yeah,
have to cost them an arm and a leg and multiple other side effects, which is
absolutely,
the beauty of it.
absolutely. Wow. We'll be back next Wednesday. We have more authors to interview around this topic. So stay tuned, and thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you, and blessings to you and yours.